The morning sun hung low over the quiet Texas countryside, its golden light breaking through the mist that rolled across the open field. James Callan stood by his old pickup truck, the weight of another sleepless night heavy in his chest. A single father and retired Army medic, James had spent years trying to silence the echoes of war, but on this ordinary Tuesday, fate decided to bring the war back to him, not with gunfire, but with a faint cry for help that drifted through the still air. He froze. It wasn't an animal's cry, it was human. His heart pounded as instincts kicked in. Grabbing his first aid kit, James followed the sound through the tall grass until he found her, a young woman in torn fatigues, blood staining her sleeve and side. Her name tag was half torn, but he could make out one word: Harper. Her eyes fluttered open weakly as he knelt beside her, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Stay with me, soldier, you're not done yet." If you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity's power to heal, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Stories like this remind us how one act of compassion can change a life forever. James worked quickly, his hands steady but his heart racing. The memories of battlefield rescues flooded back dusty roads, broken bodies, desperate calls over the radio. He hadn't thought he'd ever do this again, not after losing his best friend in combat 5 years ago. But as he pressed gauze against Harper's wound, that old voice inside him whispered, "Save her, James. Don't fail her too." He lifted her into his truck and sped toward the nearest town, one hand gripping the steering wheel, the other keeping pressure on her wound. Along the way, Harper slipped in and out of consciousness, mumbling fragments of sentences about a convoy ambush, a betrayal, and something about missing data that had to reach command. James didn't understand, but he promised he would help. At the small town hospital, doctors rushed her into surgery. James stood in the waiting room, shaking, his palms still sticky with her blood. He hadn't felt this helpless since his wife, Lauren, died 3 years earlier from cancer, leaving him to raise their 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, alone. The hours crawled by until a doctor approached him with tired eyes and said Harper would live, but just barely. She had lost too much blood, and she had no one to call. Over the next few days, James visited her room every morning. Harper rarely spoke, but he saw the battle in her eyes, the will to survive, the guilt she carried. Slowly, she told him bits of her story. She had been part of a classified transport mission overseas when her team was ambushed. She'd escaped with critical data, but her convoy never made it. She'd been declared missing in action. Somehow, she had found her way back to U.S. soil, half dead, and hiding from someone she believed had betrayed her unit. James listened in silence, his heart torn between disbelief and compassion. He knew trauma when he saw it, the kind that haunted nights and stole peace. So, when Harper was discharged but had nowhere to go, he did what few others would. He invited her to stay in his small farmhouse until she regained her strength. The days that followed slowly turned into weeks. Harper began helping around the house, her quiet strength bringing new light to their lives. Chloe adored her, calling her Captain Harper, and begging to hear stories about her adventures. The laughter that filled their home felt like sunlight breaking through years of rain. For the first time since his wife's passing, James felt hope stirring again. But the shadows weren't done with them. One morning, James noticed a black SUV parked near his property. Later, a man in a dark suit came to the door, flashing a government badge. He asked strange questions about Harper's whereabouts, claiming she was under investigation for espionage. James's stomach tightened. He realized this went deeper than he thought. That night, Harper confessed that she had proof of corruption in the upper ranks. Her unit had been ambushed because they discovered illegal arms deals involving senior officials. The files she carried could expose everything. James faced a choice: turn her in and protect his family, or risk everything to help her bring the truth to light. The soldier in him knew what was right, even if it meant danger. He told her they would finish what her team started. Together, they made copies of the files and sent them anonymously to trusted veterans and journalists. Within days, the story exploded across national headlines, shaking the military command structure to its core. Arrests followed. The truth could no longer be buried, but the cost was high. One evening, as James and Harper sat watching the sunset from the porch, she received a call from the Department of Defense. She was to be reinstated and honored posthumously for bravery because officially she was still missing. Harper smiled through tears, whispering, "Guess I get a second life." James took her hand gently, replying, "We both did." Months later, Harper moved into a new role as a counselor for wounded veterans, helping others heal from the same pain she once carried. James continued raising Chloe, but Harper was never far away. On weekends, she'd come by with groceries and laughter, teaching Chloe how to plant flowers in the garden Lauren once tended. Their lives were no longer broken pieces. They had become a mosaic of survival, love, and rebirth. Years passed, and Harper's story became legend within military circles. The soldier who returned from the dead to expose corruption and save countless lives. But for James and Chloe, she was simply family proof that miracles still walk this earth, sometimes dressed in dusty fatigues and scars that don't fade. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps spread stories that remind the world that compassion and courage still matter. And before you go, comment below. Kindness always finds a way. Let's fill the world with stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that every act of love can change a life forever.